Hello everyone, I forgot to take this thing off. And Jester forgot to sit. There we go. Okay. I am not going to honor Mr. Terry's legacy today. That's not the plan anyway. Because... okay. I'm planning on doing some stuff with the terminal, but I'm not sure how to do it. Yesterday I came up with an idea that I kind of like, but the more I think about it, the more I don't know how I would implement it. So I guess I'll have to consider that a little bit. Either way, one thing that's for sure, again, sorry, Terry, is that I don't want my terminal to just run an entire ass programming language compiled just in time, because that is... Well, actually, the biggest issue I have with that is syntax. Not really the idea itself, just the syntax of doing it. And I think something got in my eye. Okay, I'm good. Alright, so... There is a lot happening here, so let's close everything. Interesting. Hello, Arctic. I made this little format change yesterday, and I kind of never finished it, never did anything with it, and there's definitely something in my eye. I'll be right back. Okay. It was an eyelash. Alright, so, yeah, part of what I need to do with the terminal will eventually have to do with this. So I'm thinking I don't change this until it is time to change this. I essentially just gave this enum a type. That's it. I feel like it's not fully gone. Whatever. If you see my eye twitching weirdly during the stream, that's why. Okay. Oh, I forgot I had this syscall. In case of JS break glass, this is a syscall that is essentially just prints this and panics your system. In case you forgot. And again, try to do anything that has to do with a web browser nowadays and you'll understand why I don't want JavaScript. I was on Steam. Is Steam actually made in React? Because I was checking out Steam earlier and goddamn, it's such a... Like, Steam is actually great as a platform, as like the way that they run their company. I've heard their hardware is pretty good. I guess I'll find out when they release the new stuff. But their store is so slow, at least on Linux, and I honestly forgot what it's like on uh on Windows. I feel like it was made in React. I heard somebody say that it was made in React. Steam's interface is built in React. Yeah, we can tell. It's slow as hell. It's horrible. In the app, if you open it in the website, it's literally the same thing and it works better. I guess the browser is just more optimized. I don't know. I was looking at some new stuff, yes. Somebody mentioned it a while ago. This coffee's still too hot to drink. I don't want to burn myself. And no, but the enum, it doesn't really need a... although the definition of it shouldn't be here. Just declaring an enum in C without a name, the values become available. So I can use them without ever referring to them as an enum. And then in the mode, it's just int32. Technically, int32, not uint. But I'm changing all of that eventually. The thing next to my name is new shell. Hold up. New. Private server. I'm not allowed in the new shell Discord server. Wait, hold on. Because they actually have their Discord server here. Hello, Peter. Please join our community at this link. But then it shows us... I love that clicking links just doesn't fucking work anymore. Interesting. Alright, so there... If you join through here, you can openly join the invite, but if you look at the server, it says private server. That's interesting. Anyway, just... I barely even look at Discord servers in the first place, so I'm not gonna join. I was just surprised that it says private server when they literally have it on their... Every time you open the shell, actually. It tells you to please join our Discord community. Also, it spams all of this shit every time you open it. Goddamn. And also yesterday I saw it, and I saw that it was based off the new language, so I was looking at that, and the language itself is horrifying. It's very... is it Lisp-like? Yeah, Lisp-like. Like, it's so much parenthesis. I mean, this is insane. This is insane. It also gave me flashbacks to this NS stuff, because that's old Apple. So old that it wasn't even Apple. Wait, so you're like a new Nepo baby. Interesting. Okay. Man. Well, maybe I'll keep that open. All right. So, about making a shell, which I guess is what we're doing, right? You know, I couldn't even tell you exactly the legal definition, the actual definition of the shell. Like, how is the shell different from the terminal? Couldn't really tell you that, to be completely honest. probably should have been a little bit more specific about what I'm looking for. I mean, I understand the difference, kind of, but it's one of those things that you just know. So you probably never looked it up. So you don't fully like if you asked me the difference between a shell and a terminal, I couldn't tell you. So let's begin with that. Hello, Maxon. An operating system shell is a computer program that provides a relatively broad and direct access to the system on which it runs. It's a relatively thin layer around an operating system. Okay. I did not know that it was that I did not know why it was called that. Most shells are command line interface. Some graphical user interfaces also include shells. What does that look like? Hold on, because we might be about to just change the trajectory of the stream forever. Graphical shells. Built on top of a windowing system. In the case of X-Window Shell or Wayland, the shell consists of an X-Window Manager or Wayland Compositor, respectively, as well as one or multiple programs, providing the functionality to start installed applications, to manage open windows and virtual desktops, and often support a widget engine. Oh my god, Jester! Every time! Every time! Brother, you know it's bad when the picture I used to censor him is a picture of him shitting. Look at him now. Wouldn't even be able to tell he was violating himself. Insane. I just watched a video on YouTube that inspires me. I'm happy that inspires you. I'm assuming the last little few seconds are not included in that. Shell is the backend, terminal is the frontend. See, this is exactly why I wanted to look up what a shell technically is, because I couldn't tell you the difference. Again, I know that a terminal is a terminal emulator, and that means that eventually it's based off of an actual terminal that used to be the terminal, the one terminal. But the shell. What is the shell? Because from this definition, you're telling me that this counts as a shell? This? No way. Nah. I refuse to believe you. A graphical user interface provides okay, we know what that is. Opening, closing, moving, and resizing windows, as well as switching focus between windows. Graphical shells may be included with desktop environments or come separately as a set of loosely coupled utilities. Most of the user interfaces develop the metaphor of an electronic desktop, where data files are represented as if they were paper documents on a desk, and application programs similarly have graphical representations that have been invoked by command names. So, yeah, just this is part of the shell, I guess. This is part of the shell. Kind of, alright. Hello, Rudy, I'm good. How are you? Yeah, the terminal, the original terminal, the OG, was this, if I'm not mistaken? What the fuck did I do? How did I end up on that page? This is one of the original terminals that the terminal emulators are emulating. But not necessarily that one. Which, by the way, terminals are based off of 1960s and 70s technology, and they're emulating that technology because why did we think this was a good idea? I am... done. As I've said in the past, Every decision made from the 1990s onwards in computing and in several other aspects if I was up to it, but I'm streaming programming here, so I'm limiting it to my domain, is thrown out the window here. We don't do that shit. We don't do anything that was decided from the 1990s onwards. We might independently come to the same conclusion. Or, when it comes to networking, you kind of have no choice. But for the love of Christ, we've made some mistakes. Capital M. There's also some hair getting to my face. Because it's officially fan season. And also, I'm sensitive because of allergies. So even just one hair just like slightly touching my face already like bothers me. A terminal emulator still very much emulates what original terminals used to do, which we're talking about 70s and maybe even 60s technology. Why? Why? We could do so much more. Granted, not much of a point, because like anything that's done outside the terminal is probably more efficient. So you don't need to develop the terminal further. And frankly, I don't even necessarily want to work with the terminal all that much. I've mentioned that I don't like the terminal. But first off, I still stick to my 1990s thing. And I still think we could make them a little better. There's people who genuinely enjoy using the terminal, sure. We could have tried to make them a little bit. I don't know. Hold up. I got you. Less stupid. Apple has, at least. Actually, that didn't even paste like I expected it to paste. So what I expected you to do was... Why are you not doing it anymore? Did I see a question mark there? No. I forgot how to do it, that it pastes with the escape sequence. Not sure why it's not doing that. Anyway. Actually, original terminals didn't even have a screen if you think about it. And also, terminals nowadays, like, you'll see the term TTY a lot, which refers to this, teletypewriter. Video display unit. Ooh, are we ready for that type of technology? I don't think we are. It's kind of, I ended up going down a rabbit hole. It kind of made sense that back in the day, the terminal was the only thing on the computer. And then, when they introduced GUIs, you still had the terminal, which was now just a program in the computer. But do we need it to, like, perfectly replicate behavior from, again, 50 years ago? I'm thinking not. But anyway, what I'm here to look at is shells. Apparently, you don't necessarily have to run the terminal to run a shell. Apparently, even just, according to this anyway, even just like file browsers are a shell. because it defines the shell as just a program that provides relatively broad and direct access to the system on which it runs. Didn't mean to click on that. So there's the command line ones, but then there's also the, visual ones. So that is kind of interesting. I mean, obviously I knew that you could do things like that. That's mostly how I do these things, but is that French? Musique, mes images. Cloutier. That's how they call Claude, by the way. Actually, pretty sure Claude in French is just Claude, so that kind of ruins my joke, but whatever. I forgot what I was saying because I said something so stupid it just deleted the rest of my brain. It just, what do they call it? Summarized my memory to make space for new context. I am working on an operating system, yes. Alright, so the command line interface is the one that we're used to, right? The shell. And for example, new is another type of shell. We got new, what's the name of default shell on it's bash, right? Bash. See, there's so much stuff that I know, but like it's not like I've ever thought about it more than 2 seconds. Yeah. Bash, the born again shell. Alright. A completely free software alternative to the born shell sh. Alright, so sh was the Unix shell. Bash is the Linux shell. Mac uses the Z shell, which sounds like a C shell, but it's not a C shell. A C shell is the C shell. Couldn't even tell you what I'm trying to do at this point. I mean, I started out the stream wanting to make a system that I could use to expose some of this library's functions through the command line. Right? And I believe I did some testing for that, for the syntax of how to do that. Whereas today I will build the actual system to do it. I think I did it here in helpers. Yeah. So like pwd would be defined as just like call this function. And then a little syntax here to define how the arguments would be parsed and all that. So all that. That is the plan for today. But again, is that shell? That's just commands. But they're commands that run on a At this point, I'm confused because like the definition of shell has changed. No, really, my knowledge of what a shell is has changed. I'm not using the Linux kernel. I made my own kernel. That's why it smells like popcorn. And I was also talking a little bit about the syntax of the shell. And if anyone has any pointers for other shells that have, their own syntax that is maybe nice to work with, that you particularly like, I would love to hear that. Because I was thinking, the way that you write bash scripts is absolutely horrifying the second they get a little bit more complex than usual. For example, this shit. The fee-fi-fo fum of it all. Which I always thought if was because of backwards. But somebody pointed out maybe it's because of finish. Couldn't tell you. Horrifying syntax. Either way. So, absolutely horrifying. However, my first thought was, I have a compiler, I have my own language, I'm already using my own language. It's very similar to C. It's supposed to be C with my own version of C, pretty much, kind of, not really. So really, if I was smart, I would have just called it D, but sadly, D is already taken, but I could call it this, but that's, I don't know, feels a little narcissistic to me. Then again, Linux did it, so. Well, Linus did it. Though I think he didn't do it, a friend of his did it without telling him, so maybe I just need to tell one of my friends, hey, can you just, go into this file and change the name of it? That way, I didn't do it, but it's still named after me. Anyway, going through a lot of tangents today. I'm not sure we're gonna get anything done today at all. Yeah, I thought, obviously, I have my own language. Can I just use this to do scripting? And yes, but at the same time, no. Because there is an advantage that I do believe that these kinds of scripting languages have when it comes to running a program like this. I actually used this exact one yesterday as an example. If I wanted to call this function, which... this is Linux, actually. I thought it was a Mac yesterday when I was reading it. Whatever. If I want to call this function... in a regular programming language kind of way, you could do it like this. Not necessarily. Is that a dog hair in my mouth? You motherfucker. I don't know. I'm not sure why you need to kill. What K stands for and what kill stands for and why they're separate. Or maybe I just made it redundant for no reason. We're gonna man fuser real quick. K is kill. But then I have a capital kill. Don't know why I did that. Doesn't look like that's actually... I probably copied this off of something and I just never thought about it too hard. Okay, so yeah, the double kill is not really necessary. Right, but you could do either something like this for the syntax of it, or something like... if this is an enum, if not, you would have to do it as like that, and then... Not sure why the syntax is completely... well, I do know why the syntax is completely breaking down, because this is not valid syntax for the script that we're in. But anyway, this relatively clean syntax is not as good as this syntax, especially when you're typing in a terminal. So I like this syntax for the terminal, but not for the scripts. But I kind of want to make it the same. I don't know, so I wouldn't mind coming up with some scripting language that allows me to do things like this, because this syntax without the quotation marks, without explicit order of the arguments and all that stuff is really useful when you're actually working in a terminal. And for scripting, I would rather it be the same, but then for scripting, this syntax is horrifying, so... I could just make my language just be like, a function call is this, followed by other arguments with no spaces, like, just allow that type of syntax. And just proper if statements, for the love of God, proper if statements would not be that difficult. Also, the syntax for this, like for variables inside of strings, is a little bit inconsistent, I feel like. So anyway, maybe I need to explore all of these things. But really what I wanted to do is to expose functions to the terminal. But yeah, before that, I kind of want to explore a little bit of... I did see a suggestion before. Anyway, any suggestions for shells that have a nice scripting language, please let me know. Simple terminal. Uh, Actually, this is probably scriptable, right? Oh my god, their website is horrifyingly slow. New shell scripting language. Programming in new. Alright, the new shell as a programming language. Each major language feature has its own section. Just like most programming languages allow you to define, you can use custom commands for this purpose. From other shells, you might be used to aliases. New shell's aliases work in a similar way, and they're part of the language. By the way, that's another thing that I kind of needed to figure out, because I have a couple aliases in my normal shell that I don't have in new. So I wouldn't mind figuring them out. You could have given us a bit of an example, but okay, here we go. This has examples. Okay. Greet custom command. Beautiful syntax as always. I want to see how you do if statements. That's the question that I have. Wait, hold on. I'm seeing a lot of functional programming stuff here, which I was talking about yesterday. Like, I would like my scripting language for this stuff to have some functional support, because functional programming is great for data manipulation, and a lot of stuff that you do in the terminal is data manipulation. So I wasn't sure what I was doing yesterday, and I kind of ended up hitting a dead end with what I was trying, but I feel like I was still on the right track. I was just thinking of it wrong, I guess. Alright, so you define a function as greet with 2 arguments, and then you call it like this, or like this, and this is an error. Optional parameters, I was wondering about that. Alright, so you can define parameters as optional. Don't do if statements. What? Parameters with a default value. Flags directly in the language definition. Very nice. Alright, this is how they do if statements. It's a genuinely normal syntax, I feel like. It's not... do they have a more complex example? Here's a for. I feel like this scripting language is very much validating what I was saying yesterday about like functional programming, because they're using a lot of examples of functional programming here. Okay, so nice. I might want to switch to new for a bit, just to see what it's like. But all right, I like that syntax a lot more than the bash syntax. The bash syntax is so horrible. And then Apple has decided that, again, they were switching away from bash, I believe, that they were using before. And instead they use another shell called Z shell, which is very similar but slightly different. So, just different enough that scripts that you write on Linux will have a tiny little syntax issue on Mac, or a script that you write on Mac is going to have a tiny little syntax issue on Linux, and you have to refine them to make them work on both. It's annoying as shit. It's really, yeah, it's not great. But besides that, they're very, very similar to the point that if you don't know much about what you're doing, you might not even realize there's a difference. All right. Um, Instead of going for if statements, I go for clock speeds. I see. Do anything but never go for a single listing, if you know what I mean. All right. So I couldn't. It's funny. I've been reading this article about a shell for the better part of an hour, and I genuinely could not, to this moment, like define what the actual shell is. So how about we just start writing some damn code and then just move on? All right. Let's just do that. All right. So, um, first things first. I want to be able to call functions funnily enough, I'm going to use getCurrentDir. I'm going to use this one as an example. I want to be able to call functions from my terminal directly by just making a little mapping for them. Now I do have this define here, which is supposed to make it easy for me to like define which functions get put into parameters and all that, but I'm gonna build it manually first because I need to fill this in with something at some point, and right now I don't. Funnily enough, though, I'm gonna do it with getCurrentDir, and the implementation of that is a print error and return 0. So that's not super helpful, but it'll help me get the thing going. All right, let me read a little bit more about this. All right, so obviously an operating system provides services to their users like file management, process management, batch processing, and operating system monitoring and configuration. Most of them are not direct interfaces to the underlying kernel, even if a shell communicates with the user via peripheral devices attached to the computer directly. Shells are actually special applications that use the kernel API in the same way as it is used by other applications. A shell manages the user-system interaction by prompting users for input, interpreting their input, and then handling output from the underlying operating system. Yeah, so essentially what I want to do, yes. Since the operating system shell is actually an application, it may be easily replaced with another similar application for most operating systems. Fair, alright. In addition to shells running on local systems, there are different ways to make remote systems available to local users, such as approaches are usually referred to as remote access or remote administration. Don't think I care about this too much. Command line and graphical. All right. Okay, I understand. That's the funny thing. I understand what I'm doing. I understand what I need to do. But what is it? I don't have the I don't have the words to define it. I don't have the words to define it. If you asked me, if I was taking an operating systems class and they asked me what is a shell, define a shell, I would flunk that test. And I did. They didn't ask me that question, but I still flunked that test. So badly. At some point I was literally the only one retaking operating systems class, so perseverance and all that. It's supposed to be a lesson. See, but a shell as a terminal user interface is already wrong. Because it's apparently not. That's the part that like really confused me about it, is that the shell isn't necessarily I guess, okay, if I had to define it from the definition that I understood here, all it does is, yes, it just wraps around functions that other programs have. So around literally my intuition, I feel like, was very right with this. Just wrap functions. That's it, just wrap functions. Shell isn't just a runner sandbox. No, also no. It just wraps functions that the operating system, not necessarily like of the operating system, just like I completely lost my train of thought there. All right, anyway, all it does is it just wraps around like system utilities. All right, so let's leave it at that. And I want to make mine wrap around this library where I have built most of the functionality that I use for literally anything. So the command line interfaces are the ones that like people in chat are saying, but then again, from this definition, the graphical ones are also part of, they're also a shell, I guess. Because yeah, technically this program here is providing me access to this folder and navigation between folders and all that. It's the same as running ls and cd a bunch of times, just with cute little formatting on top. I guess more so you would say that the shell, it's more general than I thought, which is why I'm like blanking on how to define it properly. Again, I understand it, I know what I need to do. It's just if you ask me to sit down and like write in a test what my definition of a shell is, I find it too broad. It's almost too broad of a definition. It feels like it means nothing, right? Because, oh, it's a thin layer around the operating system. What does that mean? Syscalls are a thin layer around the operating system. But, you know, a shell provides you a layer around that. But not necessarily just syscalls. It can also do things that have to do with, like, user space. So, you know. Anywho. Alright. The shell, la concha de tu madre. Not that one. I need to think about structure now, because it is technically just a program. It's just a function provider. That's very much what it feels like. That's very much what it feels like. Your GUI is essentially a shell. Yes. That's what I learned from this. Because it literally shows you this. This is for KDE, but still. At Microsoft, actually, Windows Shell as their shell. Windows Shell provides desktop environment, start menu, and taskbar, as well as a GUI, all done in beautiful React Native. Anyway, um, comparison of command shells. It's interesting. Jesus. Alright. This looks overwhelming. Alright, where's the Bourne shell here? The POSIX shell also counts. The Bash CSH, DCSH, Hamilton C shell, Windows command.exe. It's funny that the POSIX ones don't have completion, which really sucks, by the way. Alright, so I'm just gonna start building shit, and I don't know the definition of what I'm trying to do. I don't know, we're just vibing, but not vibe coding. Okay. Am I trying to dethrone Linux? Not even for a second, no. They can keep that market. Okay, so yeah, I just want to make something that allows me to quickly be like, hey, expose this function, so I can make a command out of it. Do I provide it as an application? I'm assuming so? I'm gonna put its code in here. Right? Worst case scenario, I'll move it. I keep forgetting that nothing that I do is necessarily supposed to be kind of static. Can always change. Alright, so I'm going to create two functions for it. And then in the terminal, I'm going to want to, invoke these functions. So the first one is going to be maybe a boolean. Register func. We'll define the rest later. Not sure why caps lock was on. He bought a Cloud Code sub and put it to rewrite the core of Linux. That's gonna be amazing. It's trained off of Linux, so it's literally just gonna rewrite it with itself. So it's gonna be like, hold on, let me rewrite this thing real quick. That'll be $20, please. Is that how much a subscription is? Or has it gone up to like 200 now? Anyway, one of the functions is we want to register a function, and another one is we want to run something. Which, to be fair, we already have a little bit of an exec syscall. which is very similar to what I'm doing here. But, wait, no, actually, system. No, I have both, technically, but system is the one that I'm using inside of the terminal right now. Whereas instead I'm going to want to use this. Now, most likely, the shell itself is going to need to have some sort of kind of state, right? Something that you can use to refer to it. So that I can have multiple shells in the terminal and all that. I don't even know what I'm doing. Oh my god. There's actually like so unclear on the definition of what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna do shit. I'm just gonna do shit and see how it works. Right, just define a shell instance. Or shell handle even. I'm not even sure what to put in it. I guess I also need to give my shell a name. Though maybe right now I'm building more of a shell interface, which you can just replace if you want your own shell, so I'm not sure. Anyway, new shell is gonna do literally nothing. But then, I'm not sure how to begin doing this. Alright, I'm just gonna start by going to the terminal itself. And no, where's the terminal? That's here in user. Terminal. Terminal. Alright, so in the terminal there should be a call to system. No? Is it just a call to exec directly? Oh, system focus. Okay. System focus is another version of system which allows you to set the kind of focus that you want. So this is the exec command function. And right now what it's doing, but weird, it's handling the state of the current command being executed by just opening it as a process. It gives you a process ID and then opening its standard output and state. Which, cool, but not great, I guess. You might want to make it a little bit better than that. I hate that this is written in C++. Not gonna lie. But this is actually inheriting from console. So I kinda want to keep it that way. P9 did have a shell. I don't remember the name of it. RC. That was a CVE with an advertisement for... I thought it was a video game. Okay. It's a conference. I feel like a lot of what I'm doing in the terminal, I should do in the shell instead. Like, history, is that per shell? I think so, because... Yeah, this is the last command that I ran inside of the shell. So the history should be per shell. What's the difference between a terminal and a shell? It beats me. But The terminal just runs the shell. Right, so anyway, I guess at the end of the day, I want my terminal to run a shell, like I said, so we'll just have a pointer to the current shell, and also a create default shell function, which should be customizable, but it isn't right now. I'll just make it as a simple function. Okay, about that, I actually have a question. You can change your default shell. Let me see how to do that. That's gonna answer my question. How to change default shell in Linux. The 3D model has shader issues. It goes mentioned. It's a pigment of our imagination. That is a long setup. To change your shell, change the ch command. Really? Wait, is bash not the default on Ubuntu? Okay. The shell should have the syscall stuff? I think so, yes. Yeah, bash is the shell and terminal is the program that gives you access to it. But then again, the shell is really just defined as being the a wrapper around common functionality that the operating system provides. So technically, this is also powered by a shell. It's just different than a terminal. It's not text-based. So, like, who handles that command line translation? Or who handles the GUI translation? That's the program itself, not the shell, right? Except the shell can also be a GUI program itself, so... See, the more I learn, the more confused I get. Terminal is the front end of the shell. I mean, that's how I would define it, yes. React time, no. See, because here, for example, it calls an X window manager or Wayland compositor as the shell, respectively, as well as one or multiple other programs providing the functionality to start installed applications. So, yes. The shell is more of an environment, really. All right. I have to say, changing the default shell with sh doesn't answer the question that I had, which was, who controls that? Well, it kind of does. Because like mostly when you customize the stuff that you do in your terminal, you do it through a dot file, like bash profile or something like that, like aliases and whatnot. The fact that you use a command, I just want to know how that command is implemented, kind of. Because I want to know where the terminal goes to determine what the shell is. Changes the login shell. Well, this is all the shells. And yeah, it changes your login shell. More so the question is like, how does it do that? Does it write to a certain like system file or what? Because there is etc cells, but that doesn't really tell me a whole lot. Yeah, it doesn't really tell me a whole lot. Anyway, yeah, the terminal is literally just the front end to it. But so is this. So is the Files app, so is the launcher, this thing here, apparently. I'm kind of confusing, not gonna lie. Hold on, let me do a create shell. Then why don't I just... Alright, I'm gonna do a shell handle pointer create shell. And then I'm still gonna keep my new shell function, so I'm not sure exactly why I deleted it. Which populates the handle, just so I can have this function implemented as shell handle handle. Zalloc with the size of a shell handle, then return that handle, and then populate it inside of a new shell. Yeah, my terminal is just gonna hold a shell, and actually this alright, so get new shell is not really necessary. I don't need this function at all, actually. I just need a reference to the current shell. I don't need this function. Now, when you launch the terminal, we're gonna create a shell. And we do that by just setting its current shell to create shell. Right, so that's gonna do that. And also we're gonna put a print here. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get this little Shelly here. Maybe that's what I'm gonna call it, my shell, Shelly. Or Sheldon. We're gonna want this to show up in the terminal. And we do need syscalls for this. Sheldon Cooper is what came to mind, but it's not the reference that I'm going for. I'm not going for any reference, to be completely honest. What other Sheldons even are there? Pretty sure I just saw his picture there. Yeah. Alright, so it's Sheldon Cooper. Bazinga OS. No. Alright, so a lot of the stuff that's currently in the terminal will actually move to the shell. And that's very interesting. I'm thinking the way that I currently do like these prints, these things, is first off, none of this is inside of its own program. So it won't really show up in the terminal. But it's also part of the terminal. It's technically still the terminal. That's kind of not great. But I'm kind of thinking of a way that I can easily just pipe the input to the shell and output to the shell in a simple way. I can just create a function pointer for it. Hold on, I'm starting to like this. Can I do a function pointer with like veridic arguments? Yes. Kind of shocking, to be completely honest with you. All right. Is terminal emulated and launching the shell as a process? Is it supposed to launch it as a process? I'm using it more as an interface than a process. Do we consider it its own process, or do we consider it? I'm not using it as a process right now, and I'm actually okay with that because then a lot of this I can reuse for other stuff, which I wouldn't mind. All right, so I want to register the it is supposed to. Well, supposed to means nothing when you're not following POSIX, so nah, I'm good. All right, what did I do wrong? Gonna do this, and then if handle and handle console output, then handle console output fmt va args. What's the syntax for this thing again? this. Oh, no semicolon at the end. If handle and handle console output, handle console output. No, I did that wrong. Like that. Multi-threading? No. Yeah, bin bash or cmd.exe are programs. That's true. Now that you put it like that, yeah, I agree. But I don't necessarily want to do it like that. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's still a pseudo program, right? I'm just kind of simplifying it a little bit by doing this. I don't know. I'm kind of experimenting right now. I'm not sure how I want to do this. Anywho, we're gonna do this. We're gonna print this, and then back to the terminal. When we create the shell, does the terminal have an explicit like write function? It should. I believe I just forgot how it does all that. Let me see this. That's kind of ugly. But put string. That's the one. Wait. Yeah, come to think of it, that's not how you do that. That's not how you do that at all. Should not be using variadic arguments for this. Didn't I just tell you to do double cursor? Alright. Just one output. So get rid of that and that. And then I can actually create a function for this. Static inline function. What language am I writing all of a sudden? Shell print, which is actually going to take a shell handle. It's going to take a format, and it's going to take variadic arguments, but it's going to resolve the variadic arguments and all that. Now we can replace that with this. Then we have to do a... Can I just copy this part? I'm just gonna copy this part. This part, actually. In a way, I am treating this this shell as kind of a somewhat of a virtual machine. Not really, because it doesn't really run processes, but it kind of wraps around a lot of their functionality. Maybe, I guess. We'll see. Again, I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. Another thing, if no handle out buffer buffer, that. All right, so I can use the handle out buffers limit minus the handle out buffer. Wait, do I need to do this? I don't need to do this at all. I can just do buffer right with, wait, there's a name for it. Buffer right VA with handle out buffer FMT args. All right, and then this is the part that feels a little bit weird about it. No, wait, I did it wrong. I'm going to return, and otherwise we're going to do handle console output. I'm not sure how I want to do this exactly. Hello, Lolliet. Like someone famous. Who do I look like? I'm confused. I'm gonna use a string slice here. And then this part may be wrong, but no, I don't think it is necessarily gonna be wrong. I'm just going to hold the cursor as the handle out buffer cursor. And create a string slice, and this string slice is going to be the handle out buffer plus the cursor, and its size is going to be the size. All right. So I'm going to use a buffer to hold whatever gets printed to the shell into this buffer. And I'm just going to keep track of, before I do the writing, where I was. I used that, plus what I actually wrote, the size of what I actually wrote, in order to create a string slice that I can then use to print this shit. Last thing I need to do is actually create the buffer. So buffer create. We're going to give it a default size, and we're going to allow it to grow. And this is going to be put into the handles out buffer. Then, if we have a console output, we're going to plug that in, and then we're going to just print the shell. New shell created, welcome. Cool. Okay, back to the terminal then, for one more time. When you create a shell, you need to specify a function to print. And for just a very short second, there was the put string, which is actually part of this one's parent class. But now I need to create put slice. Which I didn't change the signature to use a string slice. Which uses this signature. And then does this. What did I do? What the hell did I do? Alright, does that. I hate the syntax. Then does this, but it does it in slice.length and slice.data. And then put string is just going to call put slice using a slice from literal, which automatically gives us just a string and a strlen for the slice. Okay. I can go back to the terminal now and tell it that you're going to create a shell and you're going to call put slice as your not really. It's a function pointer. And this whole ass thing is built in C++, which means I can't pass a... You've got to be joking. What a joke of a language. Alright. I think that's the problem anyway. Where here I'm passing this void string slice. Here I have a void string slice, but because it's instanced, I can't really call it. I can't really reference the function. It's really annoying. Now the terminal is technically just a single program. This is so dumb. I hate this language. Alright. I literally have a function that you can call. The problem is it doesn't have the instance of terminal to call it on. So really what I need is a void term put slice. This is dumb as shit. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but anyway. No, that's not how you do that. That's how you do that. Dumb as hell. So I just need to hold a reference to the current terminal in order to then be able to call this C function. I hate C++ so much. It adds complexity with no real benefit besides inheritance. That's really the only benefit it has. Frankly, you could do it without inheritance. Like, you wouldn't suffer too much without it. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway. If I did everything correctly, we should be seeing the print after we recompile literally everything for some reason. Except we can't because we don't have a reference to create shell. Excuse me? Because I'm calling these functions from C++. I also need to do this. Fuck ass language, I swear to God. Yeah, that's not looking good. Yeah, that crashed. And unfortunately, Dwarf hasn't worked in a while, so it actually never tells me what these are. So I have no idea where it crashed. But see how far we get. Yeah. If there's no default terminal, then that. If not, put slice. Is this somehow giving me the wrong length for the string or something? It was an infinite loop and the crash was actually a Stack Overflow because it just kept... Well, I don't know about Stack Overflow, but it was definitely stack related. Looking good! Yeah, this visual artifact, but I think what I wanted it to do did work. Now, I didn't put slice, though. Like, I didn't see any characters actually written. Also, here I explicitly have to do this. Or, no, I can just do, I don't have a buffer new line function? It's kind of weird because I have a buffer space function. No, I don't. Never mind. Alright, buffer right const. Since this is a print function, it's always going to have a new line at the end. Can just do that. And then that. Alright, put char with the slice data, flush. Should be fine if you ask me. It didn't change any other code. Okay. Creating the shell, we should probably leave that till after we've done all this stuff. Not sure, but maybe. Yep, that was necessary. All right. So now we have a shell. All right, so the next step, I feel like, is going to be letting the shell interpret. Okay, no, before that, I need to... my ad manager just disappeared, so I won't know when there's an ad running, I guess. It literally refuses to respond to any input. Alright, it's back, maybe? I don't think it knows I'm live, but it's back. Anyway, everything that has to do with streaming is actually so annoying to set up and work with. It's not even funny. It's pretty funny, I guess. All right. Yeah. So the next shell, Jesus. The next step is I do want my shell to kind of figure out how to run certain programs. And the thing that I wanted to figure out in terms of organization is this here is a bit of a shell interface. But in reality, yeah, maybe I just want to make this shell be able to handle its own initialization. And I keep this shell.c thing to be this there's like something brushing against my, oh, it's my hair. I can hear my hair brushing against this. Yeah, so this shell.h and shell.c, I want to keep them separate from the actual shell that I'm implementing right now. Right, that way you can implement another shell in another way. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide another function pointer, which you just fill in. For that matter, do I want function pointers? No, really, no. Like well, yeah, I don't know, I'll move it later. I'm not sure exactly how to organize this. Like, this part should not be printed by this, it should be printed by the shell's, like, initializer. Yeah, you can just not use any of this if you don't want to use it, so yeah, I'm good. So yeah, this thing is gonna be that. And then this thing is going to be init. If there is an initializer, because it is technically optional, you just call init shell with the handle. I'm not sure exactly what I want the shell to be in this case, so IDK. But I am thinking this create shell thing, I move it over to the terminal, this one. So that way I can keep... Oh, I put the function pointer in the wrong place. That's why you're acting weird about it. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put the create shell here in the terminal. That way the terminal can look up its own like default shell or allow you to set up others and whatnot. No, it's not a void. It returns this. So it calls new shell, and then it should also call an initializer for the shell, which it uses to do whatever setup it wants. Mm, what is it? Init shell? What did I call it? Setup shell. Setup shell. And what are we complaining about? Out of line You're out of line. Oh, fuck. You are out of line, actually. Hold on. Well, you don't really need to pass this to it. You just do term put slice. So yeah, go back to how it was. What are you complaining about now? Oh my god, okay. I'm actually gonna call it Sheldon, by the way. It was either that or La Concha de tu Madre, and I don't necessarily want to use that one, so... Alright, so here we're going to include Sheldon, Sheldon.h, which is going to be our default shell, and eventually we're going to be able to also replace it with another one if we so wish. The lifecycle should be linked, yes. Well, it depends, because I also want to have subshells. I find those particularly useful, so... Alright, so just return this. And eventually we'll be able to replace it with other functions to do this. Now you don't use any inputs. Alright, and it does kind of need bindings. So can I just give it bindings? Like shell bindings, where I put this thing. And any other function that like allows you to communicate with a shell is going to be implemented through this. Bindings. Cannot spell, Jesus Christ. Alright, so... I'm not counting the initializer as a binding, because I only run it once, so... maybe I will need to, but right now, just don't. No, shell bindings. Which, I don't know if shell bindings, or eventually it will become kind of program bindings. so that I can generalize this to also talk to processes directly without talking to the shell. I don't know. Emulating Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Interesting. Nice. Alright, so back to Sheldon now. Creating Sheldon will still need bindings. Why did I create a folder called Sheldon.c? Alright, so we're going to include Sheldon.h, then do this. And here we're going to put the code for the shell handle zalloc to the size of a shell handle. There's eventually going to be some context as well, which is, well, might as well just create it. Some context that the shell holds. Right now we're not going to do anything, but we can actually just kind of initialize it directly to 0. Eventually we'll initialize it to something. The only apps that will use this interface are terminals in desktop environments. Yes, but the bindings thing, in order to communicate between processes, might be a thing. I don't know. Anywho, we're going to return the handle. And we're going to call new shell using that handle, using these bindings, and a void Sheldon init. And this is where we're going to want to register our built-in commands from the library. So essentially, the functions of this library that we want to expose through the shell, we do so in here. What I'm not sure about is why it hasn't found the context yet. Oh, because I put it in the wrong place. That would be the reason. Alright. Back to the terminal for the 50th time. I'm sorry I'm making this so difficult for you, terminal. That's a comma I need to put in there. Alright. So creating a shell would just create this one and eventually gives us the possibility of creating new shells based on what the terminal uses as its default shell, which will probably just be a setting, honestly, not a program that you need to run. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that yet, to be honest. Alright, so I think we're safe with keeping shell print in here and exposing it, actually, because it isn't. Oh, I mean to copy everything. Just this. And, oh, but it is static inline. So that, just move the whole thing over. And probably put it at the end, so it doesn't get in our way. Alright. So if you want to have a shell, you just have a handle, you just have some bindings in order to communicate with the outside world, and an initializer. And then, again, I don't want to run the shell as a process. And instead I'm keeping it kind of open-ended. That way, if you want to run the shell as a process, you can by just wrapping it in a process, but you don't have to do that. Where the terminal right now technically does wrap it in a process. It has its own visual output as well as the standard output of the process. as well as taking input for it, which it right now does not handle. But also, if I don't want to run the shell as a process, I don't have to. And frankly, I don't need to. It kind of acts like one. It's like a pseudo process, but not a real process. Honestly, I don't really look at kernels all that much. Find the code for projects like this is huge and honestly not too easy to read. This didn't used to be a problem, suddenly became a problem. What the hell? I mean, you're right. But it's weird that this only became a problem now. Or maybe Clang is complaining, but the system wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, alright, so what does the terminal do? The terminal just calls create shell. This function is supposed to pick the current shell based off of some preference that it sets. But right now I only have one, so I'm okay with just hard coding. Call this shell. And binds the shell's output to this helper function, which sadly needs to hold a reference to the terminal and call it like this because it's C++ and it's a bit of a shit language. Because it's not really C++, it's its own thing that just tries to imitate the greatness that is C and fails miserably at that. So it's not compatible with C pointers most of the time, C function pointers most of the time, which is why we need to do this weird hack. Anyway, this setup shell, we don't need this anymore. And now, the shell operates independently, or it should anyway. We do want to initialize it, so we're going to do a little print. I forgot to put the shell handle. So it can print something. And obviously I hate this, but I have to do it. So I did call the damn thing Sheldon. So should I make this function maybe able to return a boolean? No. Alright, so that should call this and create that, and let's see if it works. Nope. Again, same freaking issue. I actually don't need these here anymore. I need them here now. Ugly ass syntax, I swear to God. Oh, double. I'm already initializing the function, aren't I? Yeah, the initializer here calls it, so I don't need to call it twice. Alright, there we go. Now, another binding that we will need to pass to the shell is full-on commands, or I don't necessarily, well, I don't know if I want to call them commands, but input of some sort, right? So when you type into the terminal, you press enter, that gets forwarded to the shell. The shell handles that, not the terminal itself. The reason I don't want to call it command is that technically there are other types of input that you can pass to the shell. Which, you know, like Control C, bunch of pretty much anything with control in the shell works like that. My ad manager is still not working, by the way. That's great. There's an ad in 6 minutes. All right. So it's technically two different kinds of input. Like there's text input, and then there's command input. And the terminal should decide when it sends each of those. Because I really, really hate the way that escape sequences work in the terminal, and I definitely don't want to copy any of that. Instead, I would rather have some sort of toggle, whether to just type in the terminal and pass it as a full command or to directly pass the input. I don't know. But the point is I need two functions. I'm going to need to come up with names for them, but for now it's going to be function 10, because I accidentally pressed a 0 there. It was supposed to be function 1. Function 1 is just going to take a string slice as input. And function 2, alright, function 1 and function 2, otherwise it's going to get too difficult. Function 2 is just going to take a keystroke, a keyboard event, which again, the terminal decides if the shell handles the keyboard event or if it handles the keyboard event and then passes the input to the shell. That way I can, again, choose how to handle these kinds of things. Now maybe I'm going to want to wrap this around something to send commands to the shell rather than sending it raw input, but right now this is fine. Actually, this doesn't even do anything, so let's ignore it for the time being. And let's call it command input. Alright, so we can pass that off to the that's not a function pointer, what the hell? That is not a function pointer at all. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, wrong command. Okay, I already have this. Yeah, no, I'm not sure what the plan was there. But no, yeah, it should have its own, like... Alright. So running a command is just going to call the handle shell handle with a string slice cmd. Okay, so this isn't a binding, that's the problem. It doesn't go here, it goes here. If there's no handler for it, we don't call it, otherwise we just call the handler on it. Ah. If I'm not mistaken, this is the syntax for a forward declaration. There we go. Alright, so I can pass the shell handle into these. I'm just gonna make it a lot easier to write some of the code I need to write. Okay, and again, Sheldon registers some built-in commands. We don't do that yet, but if you're trying to run a command, you just run this, and then shell done run command with a shell handle and a string slice command. And let's say that if slice match we're actually going to shell print echo called. All right. So one last change I need to make here is the default terminal. The term put slice here also takes a shell handle, and it can actually check, if I'm not mistaken, what the current shell is. Wait, protected means that you can access it from this file, right? What I'm trying to do is if the default term current shell is not equal to the handle. So we don't print the results of a subshell. We only print results of the current shell. Because I do want to have subshell support. Alright, there's an ad starting, so I'll continue after that in 3 minutes. We're back. I'm wearing black and white, so I'm not about to carry him, but he's here. Anything to say? Nothing to say. No opinions on shells or terminals, Jester. That is... you do you, buddy. Alright, where was I? Right. So, this shell that I'm building is kind of ended up being a pseudo program. It's its own little environment, but it isn't a full-on process. And again, I'm more than okay with that. So I don't want it to be its own process. And it should be able to handle receiving commands. No, what the hell am I doing? I'm getting so confused about what I'm doing. The shell input should be a binding, because again, the binding is the shell communicating with the outside world. The input, by definition, is what you put in. So very much fits in this category. Alright. So. Back to that. But no. It's so messy. No, it doesn't need to be. Never mind. Look, it works like this, okay? If I ever need to change it, I'll change it. But even though, again, the input is technically supposed to be from the outside, so it should be a binding, it doesn't work like that, so no. Because you can't really customize it from the outside. So you just call a run command. That's it. So what the fuck am I even doing anymore? I don't know. Am I making a term? I'm making a shell? I think. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I think I'm making a shell. Alright, yeah, I am. Alright, here's the thing. On the exec command, wait, where does this get called actually? Here. Yeah. Most of this code should be put inside of the shell itself, but for now, I'm okay with doing it like this. One final thing is run command should return a boolean. Just for compatibility reasons for now. Which means this should also return a boolean. Which means that this should also return a boolean. Here it should return true. Here it should return false. And then this should return boolean. Alright. So here I can do if run command into the current shell with the string slice of the command, which I can just do slice from literal CMD. then we don't need to do any of this shit. Which again, most likely we will be moving this logic over to the shell. But for now, if the shell can't really run a command, then we use the default behavior, which is the one that already runs commands. That way I don't break my entire terminal just to do this. And once again, I need to bring these guys in. Alright. So if I did everything right, I should be able to call... Well, I don't think I did everything right, because this is not printing. Oh, this should be first. Alright, let's go again. Current shell calls create shell. Create shell calls this, sets up a binding, creates Sheldon, which allocates the handle, gives it this input, and then calls new shell with the bindings that we were given. And this initializer. Oh. Right. This shell is currently not the correct shell because it hasn't actually been assigned yet. So I'm going to have to modify this behavior a little bit to be like that. Because if you don't have a current shell, then you don't do this filtering. Alright. And then I should be able to do echo and echo called, which comes from the shell itself. And then if I want to call an existing function from the terminal, it works because my new shell cannot handle that. So it returns false and the default behavior takes over. I want to start learning coding in my 30s. Where do I start? To be honest, I'm not really sure where to point people to where to start coding. But I would say the same place that you would start in your 20s or 10s. Like, that part is not relevant, but something simple. I'm not very good at giving pointers for that, to be honest. It's been a long time since I've done it. Okay. So now I have this thing right here. Right, where if the string slings literal match, what was I gonna say there? If our command is echo, then we just print this right now, and that's it. The next thing to do is, of course, to call certain functions to the certain functions to the system using this whole thing here. For example, I'm gonna do it kind of manually, and then I'm gonna figure out how to do it with this system that I was trying to define yesterday, right? Obviously, you need to build it. Well, not obviously, but you do need to build it once to then be able to generalize it into a solution that's going to work in other cases. So I'm actually going to start with echo, because echo is going to just be a print, really. Well, in reality, it's going to be a shell print, so I don't even need to bind it to anything special. But that doesn't really mind it. That doesn't really matter. That does kind of matter, actually. Yeah, a little bit it does matter, because we don't have this handler. that's used here. Here. Alright, I'll figure that out in a minute. Before that, there is some code that I need to start copying over from the terminals. The terminal right now is handling when you give it a command, which is literally just a long string with spaces, turns that into arguments. I wonder if I want to rewrite the whole thing. Should be this, if I'm not mistaken. Here's where it takes a full command and calls exec command, which no, I moved it over to the system. Okay. I'm going to try to simplify this part. All right, so what I want to do is I want to take an input of any kind, it's just a string, and I want to use it to parse command and arguments. And that's also, I believe, going to be helpful when it comes to doing arguments like this, but right now we're not there yet. I did create a helper for traversing strings, if I'm not mistaken. I called it a string splitter. The string splitter takes a... Oh my god. Why does it do that? Why does it not use string slices? It's literally in slice.h and it doesn't use string slices. I'm gonna make a version that takes slices. Slice dot data and slice dot length. It's not like it does a whole lot, it just returns a little structure here. Make string splitter slice, where you pass in the command. The separator is going to be a space, and allow empty is going to be false. Alright, so that's going to give us a string splitter. And we're going to advance the string splitter. Now, we don't really need to print anything here. Well, I do want to test it, so I'm going to print, but I really don't need to print anything here. This is just an empty command, you don't do anything in that case, but yeah. Just want to print to make sure that everything is done correctly. No. Well, I did say allow empty, so I think this is gonna work. Let me see. Also nothing. But you gotta print one of these two, right? I mean, you're running this. If I call echo, it does run, so. Do I seriously not have print? The entire thing doesn't use a single syscall? So it doesn't have the header file. Nice. Oh, because if it's empty, we don't even get into this thing in the first place. Yeah. This is preventing it from happening. Okay. Well, real quick, I do want to test it, but again, this behavior doesn't mean anything. I just want it to be there. So, okay, empty command. Yeah, I'm just using Ubuntu right now, I guess. All right, so this is working. Empty command is working as well. That's it. What I really need is this, the command.
Robel_SRC followed your channel.
The full command is the input that we received. The command is what's currently in the splitter current. And that is what I compare against echo. So now, if I did everything correctly, I should be able to write echo space, and it does not detect it, because, oh, the space is also included in that. But if I do... Let me, like, manually... get rid of the last element. Okay, yeah. So I'm able to separate the command by just using this thing. For that matter, the string splitter thingy, does it have a... It doesn't have a function that gives you the current string, getting rid of the separator. So maybe I'll just create one real quick. Where the return is just the splitter's current value. But again, same logic that I just did now. If red.length and red.data red.length minus 1 equal to the splitter's character that it's seeking, then reduce the length by 1, and that way it automatically gets rid of the new line for me by just calling this function. Where was I working? Here. Echo called, okay, even if I pass it an argument. All right, that's great. And then if we are processing echo, then we want to pass in any other argument to the echo itself, to the print. So we want to do string splitter remaining for the splitter. And that's going to give me whatever arguments I passed into echo. And then I should just be able to do this, right? Do this. Nice. It echoes hello world. It also adds a double new line here because, yeah, technically the echo ends here. But again, shell print. Hold on, maybe I'm going to create a shell print. And two more versions of this function. I can make them actually, probably just to not make the code too complicated. Shell print normal is going to take a handle, an FMT, and variadic arguments, and it's going to call this function with the handle, new line by default, FMT, and the VA args, and shall put no new line at the end. Because this is actually a shell put. Alright, so now it echoes without putting a new line at the end. Cool, and we have a little built-in echo program. But this is the part that gets a little bit more complicated. Technically, all of these are going to be built-ins. The entire point of this shell is to be able to run basic utilities of the system by directly talking to the system library instead of implementing them into their own executable program. It also needs to be able to run programs, which right now the terminal is handling. It'll handle and when I move that functionality over, but right now I'm not too interested in that. Right now I'm interested in implementing a bunch of functions like this. Now echo was kind of simple to do because the way that echo works is it's just the command being echo and then the arguments passing them through, right? So every argument that comes after echo just gets passed into the program because in this case the program is just a shell put file. Alright, so echo is a really simple one. Okay, yeah. Echo is a very, very simple example of this. But the overall logic that I used here is mostly fine. I think I am going to need an entry point, right? I'm going to need to have a equivalent of this anyway. for each of the commands. So like, it actually doesn't even have to be called main. It can just be this, right? Where you pass in one argument and it's the entire string. And this is the actual implementation. Hopefully all of this can be put inside of a I'm blanking on the word. Damn, I'm completely blanking on the word. Inside of a macro, so I don't have to implement like a function every time. I can just do it kind of like in a very simple way. But I think I can do this just without argc, argv. I can just make it a little bit simpler than that. No, I'm not sure. Yeah, argc, argv might be okay. Alright, so let me do it with echo. Echo's probably the worst one to do this with. Because again, these are not running in their own process, and because they're not running in their own process, they're technically built-ins. They should have a way to move output to the shell that called them. So maybe I want to make them a little bit smarter than this. Do shell handle and do just that. Where the very basic implementation of echo is going to simply call shell put on the handle that it was given with this directly, and then it is going to return 0. No, error code is better. Error code is better, so yeah, 0. Maybe I can even standardize the error codes. Well, no, because it's also negatives, so no. Wait, can you do enums with negative values? I can. Okay. All right. So the last thing that's left for me to do is I want Sheldon specifically to be able to define built-in functions. And you do that with a string slice for its name and a cmd returns function pointer entry point which takes in a shell handle pointer, context, and a string slice argument. Hi, Red Centaur.
Illusionary Moon followed your channel.
Minesweeper and Swift to evaluate the length for game dev. Not great for game dev, but yeah. It has nice functions, but then you have garbage collection, which is controversial. Safety is nice. It's not a bad language, I have to say. Yeah. Just even Apple doesn't use it for metal. That part is not kind of great. Hello, Illusionary Moon. What have you found that's annoying for it? All right, so right now I'm just gonna. I was gonna use an array to hold these, but no point to it right now. I can just hardcode them. Nah, better if I do it in here though. Let's do it at .h. Move echo over. Scripting language. Oh yeah, that would be great. All right. No, wait. I did this entirely wrong. All right, so the first built-in is going to have it's not a compile time constant too, my god. It kind of is. But if you don't like it, I'll make it. There. Compile time constant. Are you happy? All right. So yeah, declaring built-ins isn't particularly difficult. You just have to create a static function like this that takes basic input and passes it to whatever function, and then maybe also handles input for the function. All right, so should be doable. All right, so you take the built-ins, and then there's no need to register anything in here anymore. All I have to do is slices equal cmd with built-ins I name. Then you take that and you do built-ins I entry point with the handle and the arguments. Boom. And of course you're gonna complain. All right. So now it's gonna check against all of these, trying to run one of these pseudo main functions, because they're not really doing that. They're not really processes. And if it doesn't manage to run one, then it tries the I can probably do this better with a hash map. It's going to make the checking faster, and it's going to yeah, I probably should be doing that. I'll do that in a second. I like having it hard-coded for now. Alright, it works. Then if I want to do print, for example, it doesn't do anything. Cool. Great, wonderful. Alright. Yeah, I want to do this as a hash map. It's going to be a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to need to call this the built-in hash map. We're just going to hash map create. We don't really care about its allocator because there's no such thing as doing allocations in this case. This is also supposed to be a pointer. And then what's going to be inside this hash map is just going to be hash map put Sheldon built-in hash map echo. I'll fix that in a second. Alright, the thing I need to fix is the fact that I created this get dictionary, but I didn't create a put dictionary. Well, hold on. I didn't create a put dictionary, which just takes a char pointer key and automatically uses that as a dictionary. Which just returns hash map put with the map, the key, and the value like that. Okay, so back to what I was writing. Built-ins. Hash map put dictionary. I can now get rid of this argument. I don't need this anymore. Then bool call Sheldon built-in with a shell handle and a string slice argument. First, we're going to check if the hash map is null. We're going to return false. Then we're going to check if hash map get. Wait, I'm missing the command itself. With this BND map. Hello, Chris. Then CMD data and CMD length. And this is going to be the function pointer into this thing. Which I'm also going to type def because I'm lazy. This part I'm going to have to change in a second. It's now going to be if Sheldon calls Sheldon built-in with the handle, the command, and the remaining part, which I left out. Return true. And again, here we're going to have to put exec, but it's not that simple, so we're going to keep it like it is right now. This is a pointer to a built-in entry point. If we have one, we call it. Well, if we don't have it, we return false. And if we do have it, we return wait, the return type is not really here. So we're also going to allow that to be a thing. I'm blanking on. Okay, I just have to call the entry point with the handle and the argument that we were passed in. Oh, also the way that I'm handling arguments is technically wrong. Well, no, because this is not really a real main function. It's a built-in, so the name of the command does not matter. Usually, when you call an int main with argc and argv, the first argument in argv is the name of the command itself. But here we're doing with built-ins, so we don't really have that problem. Anyway, the return type of this, the return type of this, if we've been asked to give it, we give it and we return true, meaning we actually ran a command, and the output of it you can get from here, which right now we can just ignore. All right. I love that you can read a header file and it recompiles the entire thing. It freaks out. Oh well. It's not that often, so it's fine. Unknown command echoes, so that clearly didn't work. Because, let me see. The command comes from here. This part hasn't changed, so it should be fine. We should be trying to call the built-in. And we never call this, so of course... Alright. I can still call exit. I can still call other commands from here. Cool. Now I want to try a more complex command. Well, I don't necessarily have to call a more complex command. I can start implementing some very basic ones, like pwd. Which, by the way... Oh, you know what's funny? pwd print working directory gets its current directory from the shell. there's a get current dir function that I have that I'm probably gonna have to rethink. I just needed it in order to make a build system. So it's really implemented for like cross-platform, not really for my system. But yeah, PWD actually gets its input from the shell handle. I hadn't thought about that. It is redacted from my GitHub, yes. Alright, so nothing we can do here. What, by the way, is there some kind of convention for like when to return a -1 versus when to return a 1 in a libc? Let's see. If the return type of the main function is a type compatible with int, the return of the initial call to main is equivalent to calling the exit function with a return value. Oh my god, it's talking so much. 0 is mandated as success. You can use exit failure and exit success from std_lib_h if you prefer, but 0 is well established and so is 1. Exit codes greater than 255 possible? Of course it's a whole thing. Of course this is a whole thing with libc, because libc is like that. You know what, let me just look at, what was it called? Exit success and exit failure, right? So exit success links to 0 probably. Exit failure is probably 1, but a lot of times you return -1. Is there some kind of convention for when to return -1, when to return 1, when to return 0? 0 is success. But like, when do I return 1 or -1? So if not, I'm just going to create, instead of generic error, I don't know what to call it, implementation error. And this is a generic error. Meaning you made a mistake, or whoever wrote the program made a mistake, or there's a problem with the program. I'm returning implementation error here because the shell currently does not support directories, so what the hell are you going to be returning? Okay. So then I also register pwd. And I should be able to run it. Shell has no directories. Yeah, that's correct. The shell currently does not have directories, but it did print, so it did work. All right, so now I actually want to try a more complex command, right? Let me try the worst case scenario. Maybe this is a bad idea. Probably. But I'm going to try the worst case scenario. Hold on, let me do something else as well. Oh, this is supposed to be the fine. with fn and fn. So I can just do reg built-in like that. All right. About ls, this is the interesting thing about it. It needs to parse arguments because it needs to make sure that there's only one argument, but it should also allow other arguments. Okay, maybe I went too far. I went with worst case scenario, but not in the best way possible. Let me re-implement read instead. All right. That I really like it. Any bugs get fixed in like 2 days, so that's pretty cool. All right, so read is really supposed to be a wrapper around simple read, which is this function here with this signature here. It takes the path that it's going to read, it takes a buffer that it reads from, and a size, and then it just prints that for us. Did I report any bugs? Not really. I haven't really needed to. Everything has been fixed. There were some Git issues when I first started, especially when I was working with multiple projects. Honestly, I haven't noticed if they're still there, but for the most part, I think it's fine. It's pretty good. All right, so the reason that this is more complex is mostly because of the argument parsing. There's two possible arguments that I allow currently in my read command. The first is, let's just say it's implemented like this. Oh my god, can I press the right thing? Right, so we have a first argument has to be the path, second argument is optional, and it's the size that you're going to be reading. And depending on whether this is there or not, then we call either this function or this function. So that's why it's a little bit complex. Now, I guess I need to implement an argument parser if I really want to do this. Yeah, the arguments are really going to be the hardest part about this whole thing. So I'm better off probably implementing a few like these manually and then seeing how I can generalize their code. Because the code for this one is still a relatively simple in the sense that I can just do what I'm doing here. Literally the same thing for the arguments. And this is the path. Unfortunately, these take const char path pointers, which sucks because I need to allocate a new string just for this, which really sucks. All right, but If I have more string to read, then I'm just going to parse the size. From size string data and size string length. And then if there's a size specified, we're going to sReadF into the path with, we don't have a buffer for it. Otherwise, we're going to read full file with the path and no size. All right. So yeah, this is quite a complex one. I feel AI would do in developing something like an operating system. It can do so in the sense that it can copy code from open source operating systems. But same as with everything that's done by AI, it's not worth anything. All right, this is unfortunate. I unfortunately have to do a path string. I have to allocate a damn string. Just so I can have it null terminated. Then I need to free. But to be fair, I also need to allocate the buffer. In the size that was requested. All right. And finally, I am going to shell print. Here it is actually print. And I'm going to print the buffer. And then I'm going to also free the buffer, which is release the buffer. Cool. Here, instead, I'm going to simplify things a little bit because the buffer is given to us directly by the read full file, which is actually a helper. Using the path string data, printing that and releasing that. Nice, so I wonder if I can just do this. To then put all of this here. All right. So yeah, this is possibly one of the worst case scenarios for these built-in commands, in which I have to do a lot of argument parsing, and then also some actual logic inside of this function. Because again, there's two different functions that I'm kind of trying to mirror in order to produce this whole read file thing. But now we're going to, well, no, hold on. I was going to say, how do we differentiate this read from the read that I have already implemented as a standalone process? And the answer is just going to be like, there's going to be this print at the beginning. Or even just at the end. Just put a print at the end. That's the file, bro. That's the file, bro. And that was, in fact, the file. All right. This code is going to be a lot less manual when I actually know what I'm doing in order to parse these. I guess. But I'll have to figure that out later. Is there another function that I can do the same thing for? I can't really think of one right now. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'll think about it. All right. You know the funniest part about a company forcing you to use AI? There's no difference in productivity between the people who use AI and who don't. The difference is that the company just looks at how much AI you used, and if you didn't use enough AI, that's going to be a problem. I'm maybe saying this as someone who has to use AI just because, just in case they're checking how much AI we're using to use that as a metric to measure our performance. Maybe. You never know. But the other thing, yeah, AI has been useful for like finding bugs and whatnot. And that one Linux vulnerability that I talked about yesterday, the copy fail thing, was found by AI. Because it's a great analytical tool. And you know what would make it an even better analytical tool? Is if they made it specialized for analyzing things instead of generating things. That would be pretty cool. I feel like, yeah, the current iteration of AI is very much falling apart. Um, kind of hoping that the next one is more machine learning integrated into existing tools, where the tool knows what it, obviously less generalized, right? But um, not a single thing that can do everything, but rather machine learning integrated into existing tools. And then it can, because it kind of is what they're pretending that they have, but without being what they actually have. If they had bothered building something like that, we'd be so much better off. Just like integrating it into existing tools, but for real. Not that I go to like fucking notepad on my Windows PC and there's a little fuck ass little magic symbol there. And then it just talks to the same LLM that it talks to if I run it from the snipping tool, which also apparently had Copilot for some reason. There's no reason why those should be the same AI. And if you integrated it, if you made a more specialized tool that just uses machine learning, you would probably get better results. We don't want developers anymore, we want AI drivers. Those companies are going to do so well. Definitely. Gonna do so well. Wait, I'm also returning an implementation error, which is not right. Also, why did I call it no error? I should have called it like success. Or exit success? Yeah, let's prefix them with exit. Wait, why was they getting auto-completed to exit success? Where does that come from? It literally references itself? Oh, it's provided by cstdlib, which I'm not actually using, so that autocomplete was wrong. I was just wondering if it was already implemented somewhere else. Oh. Fucking Clang. It's like, hey, you need to do a lot of setup to get me to autocomplete, but I'm gonna autocomplete with your exact code. Unless you're using something that is in standard libraries, in which case I'm going to assume that that is what you're trying to do. Yeah, my text editor is that. It's pretty good, honestly. Miles better than VS Code. Actually, I saw that Zed like recently. Are they on version 1 now? Yeah, they released 1.1 and they made a little video about it. And they're straight up saying like it's not a fucking browser in your okay, they don't say fucking, it's just my colorful language. um it's not a browser, it's an actual Rust application. It's like, damn, we can actually use that as a marketing tactic. Amazing. AI autocomplete is probably the best way to go with AI when it comes to code. Again, general AI, which is not generalized intelligence, that's a different thing. But like one AI to solve every problem was never the fucking solution. It has some big architectural problems for which it is unable to do that. And I would say that the people pushing AI know that, but considering like how much we know that Sam Altman, for example, is not even doesn't even understand what the hell the product is, like he's completely non-technical, then it would be inaccurate to say that they know that. But like the people actually working on the damn thing, on the technology, know that, doing one general tool that does everything is never going to go anywhere. Anyone who used AI for more than 5 minutes should have been able to tell you that as well. Even the people that I know that use AI, they're like, I use it to like tell me things, but then like, okay, I need to implement an algorithm. It tells me how the algorithm works, but then I implement it myself because its implementation is going to be shit. Well, yeah. But even then, I think it would be better if we had a tool that, can summarize text, a tool that can autocomplete code, a tool that can run code or do like what a static analyzer does, but better with some machine learning involved in it. I think that could be a lot better at doing all of those things. The problem with that is that the AI companies cannot just sell you a subscription to a million different tools. And also, you would have to build each of those tools. But then again, we've already built those tools. You would just have to improve them. I know it's a shocking concept. You would just have to actually put in the work to make them better. Like, we already have LSPs. We already have static analyzers. We already have text editors. We already have all of these things. Any tool ever. You just expand it more and maybe put machine learning into that, but like in a way that it complements the part that the humans have created and designed and hand crafted, instead of just throwing the slop machine to it. But instead, we ended up throwing a slot machine into everything, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and mostly it's just slop. Also, I find it really hilarious that slop and slot are just one letter apart, and they're kind of similar. Microsoft trying to put AI into the clock app? What? Wait, yesterday somebody mentioned Microsoft's K12? Is that what it K2? Something like that? I don't know. Okay, it's a link. I was like, that image doesn't tell me anything. Hands-on with the new Focus feature coming to the Windows Clock app with deeper task integration, beautiful UI, insights into your focus sessions. The new Clock app will also have some new AI features powered by the MPU on newer Windows PCs, which maybe run the Insights feature. System prompt hints at local AI-powered productivity features. Hey, prompts for the local... prompts? Sorry. Shit. Props for the local AI usage, not prompts. My bad. Specifically optimized for students. Oh yeah, that's exactly what the students need. Every student I know is like, God, I wish my clock was AI powered. You wouldn't believe how much they long for it, just as much as the children yearn for the minds. The students yearn for AI powered clocks. A clock app's focus session will act as a productivity assistant with breakdowns tasks into clear actionable steps, and it works by inferring the task category then referencing the coursework of the student. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this. You could build that. Mind you, Apple has had like focus for years now, right? This thing where you choose a focus mode from a list of things that you're doing, and you set up what they do. And I'm sure they've integrated some Apple Intelligence into it, but it's like, I don't know, I have my work focus, so I get WhatsApp messages and I get Slack messages and I get emails, like notifications for those, but it mutes my Instagram notifications. Or I have Do Not Disturb that mutes all of them except for calls or whatever. That is a million times more useful than whatever the hell actionable steps inside of the clock app can possibly be. And again, if you had bothered building, there is technically some level of even like machine learning when it comes to the even like the Apple Intelligence, the not the Apple Intelligence, the focus thing. Because there's gonna be some times where I always open the same app at around the same time, and it's like, hey, do you need us to activate a focus for this? Right, so some apps like games, it automatically knows that they are kind of because of the category. Do you want me to enable the gaming category? Hi, Bunzi. But for some other ones, it's like, hey, you always open this app at this time. Should we maybe enable this? And when you do that, you also enable this focus. Should we do that? That is a million times more useful than whatever the fuck this is supposed to be. It is also way more efficient. It doesn't need any particular like super strong neural processor, although all Apple devices have had one of them since like 2020, so I couldn't really tell you if it uses it or not. But it definitely is a lot less resource intensive. It needs a lot less training. It's localized, although this is also supposed to be local. But it's specialized, so it's actually useful. And again, what it does is it complements the behavior that the programmers have put into the app by making it more dynamic. That is a good usage to machine learning. AI is not. obviously AI, machine learning are supposed to be the same term, but now AI means LLMs, and machine learning is just like, you know that meme of like the parent playing with one child in the pool while the other child drowns? Um, Machine learning as a term is already at the bottom of the pool. But hey, in general, I would say way more useful than whatever the hell this was supposed to be. And then I did hear that Microsoft was going to do K2. Okay, so everyone's talking about that. That they were looking to reduce the amount of AI that they have in their system or something like that. Okay, I would love it if you would give me a result in English. Especially because these are English results that you've manually chosen to translate. Actually, I do think that most translation tools are powered by LLMs, and that's another useful feature. Anything that has to do with natural language, LLMs tend to be good at because that's literally what they were developed for. Anything else, completely unnecessary. We'll use Steam OS as a benchmark. That's fucking embarrassing. Lower idle memory use and smaller OS footprint. Less AI clutter and less pre-installed content. Rebuild start menu. Okay. The absolute insanity that goes into having an operating system. By definition, you have one platform that you need to support. One. And yet, using React Native to build something as important as the start menu. The absolute stupidity and incompetence that leads you to this point. Operation Unfuck Windows. Mission Impossible. Many other things are listed below. I don't care. That is so dumb. That is so dumb. Like, you know how for years we've been doing shit and you've been like, why would you do this? This is so stupid. You should have known that this is really stupid. But we completely ignored you, and also we should have known, but we also completely ignored that. We're gonna fix it. Deadline 2050. System developer. There's no need to send messages multiple times. Just I'll get to them when I get to them. If you want to do system development, like the focus that you mentioned, I think is good. Like C, C++, assembly, yes. I don't know if it's a good career, because honestly, that's not what I do for work. I mean, I enjoy it, but it's not a professional thing. So I can't really tell you anything on a professional level, but I can tell you that you sound like you're on a good path for the things that you want to focus on. Focus more on C. I'm not gonna lie to you, every time you see me touching C++, I'm going to complain and curse at it and complain about it because, well, it is. But it's just a design, a skill issue. Well, I don't want to call it a skill issue because the people who designed C++ were actually like really good programmers and also like really important to the world of programming. But like, it's so horribly designed that it makes me want to cry sometimes. But like, honestly, yeah, just go more into C++ and see why it's so bad for this type of thing. And then, I mean, that helped me realize why I don't like C++. So, but no, overall it is okay for low level. It's just in a very weird place where it has the worst of low level and the best and the worst of high level. It makes assumptions, but then you also have to make a lot of boilerplate code and a lot of BS. So like, what's the point? But sometimes it has inheritance and sometimes you need that. Like, for example, I have a function pointer that I use as a callback. The function pointer is in C. This is C++, right? So it's C enhanced. right? No, the fuck it isn't. Because in order to use that function pointer, I have to have a C function that then holds a reference to the terminal that I'm talking to, right? Which I set here. A static reference, a singleton, kind of. I mean, it is a singleton, it's just not auto instantiated. And then just calls the correct function on that. It's dumb. It's dumb. It isn't as interoperable with C as they want you to believe. And that part is kind of eh. Um, Full time I do app development, so Swift mostly. Some other stuff here and there because such is the labor market nowadays. But that is what I'm most specialized in. Well, I guess now I'm actually more so C than Swift programmer. But yeah. All right. Back to the AI thing for a second. I do hope that once the current system very obviously crashes and burns, first off, it takes a lot of really shitty companies with it. Pretty much anything that has the word AI in its name. And Anthropic, because they don't have that word in their name. And also that the next iteration of tools are powered by machine learning and not AI. Again, if you know the definition of those terms, you know how ridiculous that phrase sounds, because what do you mean machine learning instead of AI? They're supposed to be the same thing. But because AI has become a marketing term, they're not the same thing. So machine learning, but not LLMs. Or LLMs when they're needed, but other algorithms when they're better, because other algorithms are better than just throwing an LLM at the problem. Also, if we could maybe respect copyright a little bit when we train neural networks of any kind, that would be great. If we don't just scrape the entire internet without even telling anyone about it, that would be great. If we don't torrent books, that would be great. If we don't work with, companies in the third world to make them watch private and disturbing content in order to help train an AI, and then we pretend that we did it all without the help of a human because we are trying to impress investors, that would be great. But yeah. On top of the ethical issues with AI, there's also the practical issues with AI. But honestly, I mean, it's gonna sound really stupid if I say I started hating AI when it genuinely felt like it was me against the world. It sounds really pretentious, but yeah, like not using AI was like, oh, you don't use AI? What the hell? Why don't you use AI? You could just use AI. You should just use AI. Come on, just use Claude. Just use Claude. Just use Claude. But more so this year, that was more last year. This year, you very much tell that a lot of people are starting to move away from AI. And for that matter, that was me last year too, so. Again, it sounds really stupid to say like I was the only one who wasn't using AI, but that's not the way that I mean it. I just mean it in the sense that sometimes you genuinely feel that way because there is so much marketing hype towards AI and so much discord, let's put it this way, marketing hype from unpaid interns for the AI companies. Because there's no reason you should be shilling for AI companies that fucking hard when they're not paying you. AI? No, it's Al. My friend Al. All right. An electronic machine? It pretends to be one. Yeah, pretty much. Also, I forgot to mention this. Could the AI in the future, if you really want to give it a whole, if you really want to give it a try at the whole like AGI thing, can we maybe have it built by humans who have been human for more than 1 minute and didn't drop in from the planet Mars like 3 weeks ago? Ideally, somebody who acts like a normal fucking human being? Could we do that? That would be great. Because like absolutely insane behavior from the CEOs. I mean, they're CEOs, but like Jesus Christ, and the people who pay for Twitter. Graduated with CS degree, and with the crap job market, had to take an account management role. Damn. Yeah, the job market honestly has been shit for a while. Like before I found my current job, it was already like, oh god, and it's just gotten worse. And the worst part is that AI has made it worse, but it's not even AI because it literally has nothing to do with it. If you ever hear about a company, if you've ever been at a company that did layoffs that were AI layoffs because we're replacing employees with AI, you know that they didn't replace employees with AI, that they replaced the employees with you, the one who wasn't fired. Your workload doubled, and maybe they gave you like a fucking Copilot key that frankly gets in your way more than it helps you. But again, you're supposed to use it because your manager was going to check how many tokens you used, and if it's not enough, that's going to be a problem. But you know that the AI layoffs are not about AI. It's just a little trick that they figured out that if I fire people, then that looks bad and my stock goes down, which is bad. However, if I fire people and I say that it was because of AI, the stock goes up, which is good. So you lie. And you say, oh yeah, we laid off a bunch of people because of AI. Yeah. It's replacing all of them. It's not. It's not. The people that are left in the company are the ones who are replacing the ones that left, not fucking Claude. Unless it's a French guy named Claude. From what I hear about French labor laws, he's not doing a whole lot of work. Nobody buys that? They do. How many times have you heard that that actually said that the AI layoffs? Well, you do hear it sometimes, but sometimes people just parrot the damn thing. And it's just like, oh, they said that they did layoffs because of AI. That must be true. I'm just gonna take it at face value. And not gonna lie, that's also a problem in the tech industry, online discourse, influencers and whatnot, that just take everything that these companies say at face value and always give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, if you're gonna make content online just basing it off your opinion, can you actually have an opinion, please? Am I asking too much of influencers? Probably. But I feel like we all kind of know that these AI layoffs have nothing to do with AI. Again, if you yourself or you know someone that's been at one of these companies that did one of these AI layoffs, you know that your workload has gotten bigger, but it's not that it's not that your coworker is suddenly AI. You now talk to Claude instead of talking to Mark. It's that your workload has gotten bigger because Mark is gone and nobody replaced him. Not that Claude replaced them or Copilot replaced them. It's that nobody replaced it, but if they say it was AI, then they get money. And see, that thing about I like to use AI to do this, but I would never use it for this, which is mostly just generating code. Jarvis, write the test case. R.I.P. Mark, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, everyone that I've talked to that isn't a complete AI shill is like, yeah, I use AI, but it has some heavy limitations. And I know those limitations, and I use it so long as I don't reach those limitations. And again, I feel like a well-made static analyzer could probably replace AI. I mean, on the one hand, honestly, that whole thing I just said about AI, like layoffs, should be encouraging. I'm really trying to find the silver lining to it. Should be encouraging in the sense that yeah, the job market is shit right now. And again, even it really felt like shit even when I was last looking for a job, which was before the whole AI thing. I've been at my job for a while now. And eventually that's probably gonna get better. If it was really because they're replacing developers with AI, then that would never get better. But this hopefully will eventually get better. Because it's not an actual permanent replacement. It's just that AI is being used as an excuse because, again, it makes your stock go up instead of down. Can it really kill front-end developers? It can make a website, but it's gonna look like... That's the other thing. Everything that AI does is always just a copy of something that a human has made. Actually, I found this out. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it, but an example of that. What did I do? Oh no. I'm trying to Google this thing. Thank you. I kind of hope you don't know what I'm talking about with this, but if you do, 2013. Even this, the only thing that AI has produced that's actually like successful is just a fucking copy. This person is actually verified. Literally everything it does is just a copy of something that we did in the past. So, can it really replace anyone? Yeah. People whose entire job was to just copy and paste code. But another thing about it is that even if you write very simple code, there's logic involved in that. It's not just about the code. There's logic even in... Let me find the most simple function I can. The one that I just wrote, actually. Fuck it. Like, this function. This function right here. Right? Super, super simple. You literally take two arguments and you just call another function. It's pretty much just a proxy to this function with an extra argument to it. But honestly, that's just because this function is not built particularly well. I could have done it where it's literally just a proxy to that function. You may think, oh, this is the easiest function. AI can write it, and it can. But the reason that it can is because other humans have done something similar in the past, because we've all written a function that just calls another function internally. A wrapper function. That's a very common thing. So yes, AI can do it because we've done it in the past. Can it actually do it in the way that a human can, though? As in, well, I know that I have to call this function because this function is the one that actually prints to a shell. If I wasn't inside of a shell, then I wouldn't be doing it like this. Then, which shell to do it is this one, which comes from this argument here. I don't need to null check it because I don't care. This function already does the null check for me, so I don't have to do it myself. Then it uses this weird argument syntax because it's trying to print a string slice, and string slices use v in my system. And then it passes the string slice. Again, this is very much just a hack to pass in this argument, where if this function was written better, I could pass arguments directly. And then it returns exit success because it's supposed to return this thing. Even something like this that doesn't really have any logic has logic to it. And AI cannot think in logic. AI can only think in, well, the most likely function to use is the one that you gave me as input, which is this one. And the next step is most likely going to be this one. And the next step is most likely going to be this one, which again you gave me in your input. And then the next one is going to most likely to be this one. And then most likely it's going to be a parenthesis, and most likely it's going to be a semicolon, and most likely it's going to be this, and most likely it's going to be that. You can see the difference in logic. So yes, it can do it because it's been done so many times in the past that something like this is trivial, but it can't really reason on it. It could read all the documentation and piece it together. Yeah, because it is just predicting based on the documentation which one is the most likely to be relevant, right? From these functions that I have here, which one do you think, these three, which one do, no, actually this, these three, or all of these functions, which one is most likely to be needed in a function called echo? Well, I'm gonna go with the print. Why does it return exit implementation? Because it was AI generated. Which one? Oh, this one? No. That's correct, because shell has no directories. I haven't included a concept of a directory in the shell yet, so pwd does nothing. What icons do I use for my ID? I changed it recently. I couldn't really tell you. It's not cat pushing. I changed it to this one, charmed icons. And the theme is Synthwave 84, since sometimes people ask about that too. There's a difference between just being able to copy and paste code and being able to actually reason on that code. And even like when especially when I was first learning how to code, but also this happens kind of now when I'm working with something that I'm unfamiliar with. I can find an example for how to use it, right? I can go online and be like, how do you do this very common thing? Like, I don't know. SDL hello world example, right? And I can just like take this, and it's got this code. It's 30 lines of code. It's not particularly complex, right? I can just take it and I can copy it, and obviously I don't have SDL installed, so I'm not gonna bother with that. But what is this supposed to be? C code, I guess. Right, so there I have it. Kind of in the same way that AI would have done it, because it has plenty of examples to learn from and would have been able to do this exact same thing for me. But then, can I really make any changes to it without really understanding what I'm looking at? And keep in mind that I picked something incredibly simple. If I had picked, I don't know, an implementation for, let's say, a pathfinding algorithm or something like that, and I don't understand what the code does, can I make modifications to the code without understanding the logic of it? No. So AI is not really good at that. an example actually. So this is a create window. And again, I'm reasoning on the code that I'm looking at, which AI cannot do. But let's pretend that it can just do very basic reasoning. Right? How do I actually specify the position? Do I just put a number in here? What number? Is it pixels? Is it... Can I do percentages somehow, maybe? Is it some kind of struct? Obviously, this is C. It's an incredibly straightforward language. It doesn't have this kind of behavior. But, like, how do I know what to actually put in here? Would this work? How would I go about getting the size of the screen and then calculating the position based on that? I have no idea how to do that until I start reasoning over the code, which again, AI cannot do. So you just really have a really dumb autocomplete that pretends to be smart. And that is one of the many, like even then, fundamental issues that AI has. That since it can't really understand what it's doing, the people that say like AI eliminated the coding process. Coding is now all about systems design, and just say you've never written a line of code before. It was always about logic. It was always about designing the overall system. You don't just... I'm not just sitting here writing random code. I'm not just sitting here doing this. Even the most simple function, I have to reason over what it does. It's really simple compared to like the logic here. The logic, the logic that goes into a function like this is very simple. It doesn't take me a whole lot of brain power, but I still have to reason over what it does. Otherwise, I could write it like this. It's technically perfectly... It does exactly what it's supposed to do, but it never gets to that point because it returns. That the code is exactly the same, just the order is wrong, and the only way to know that is logic. The dog's name is Jester. Oh my god, and he's doing things to himself. Right. Can you really use AI without using your brain, though? You can use it to generate incredibly repetitive code that does the same thing that millions of other people have used the exact same thing for. Because again, millions of other people had used it to... You made that code in the first place, then went into training the AI. But again, they're not wrong when they say that now that we have AI, coding isn't about the code, it's about the logic. That's not wrong. It's just that it never was about the actual letters on the file. It was always about the logic. So really that just shows that you didn't know anything, but that part hasn't really changed. Like all you did is just give me a tool that can write words. But I have to reason on what those words are. It's not really the same thing. Even then, I'm not against an autocomplete type of thing. Just I don't think that it should be powered by an LLM because that's dumb as hell. Alright. Well, I'm done building a shell. Called it Sheldon. Again, the other name was La Concha de tu Madre, so I prefer Sheldon. Well, I'm not done building it. Jesus Christ, it barely does anything. But I did start planning how it's going to run some basic commands by just exposing functionality that is in this library. And again, actually, the fact that it runs as a pseudo program but it isn't its own process may help me use this for scripting inside my game engine, inside the terminal, and a lot of other things. So, that is going to be the end of the stream for today. Tomorrow I'm going to do more of this. Tomorrow what I want to do is I want to kind of standardize the argument parsing that these functions do, which is going to be this entire thing. Well, no. This entire thing. And then I'm going to be able to use some macro hacking logic magic to finally do what I decided to do yesterday. Commands. To automatically register pwd to call this function internally, to automatically register read to call this function internally with these arguments. Although read ended up being a little bit more complex because there is logic to it. So yeah, tomorrow I want to see how to actually do this. But that's going to be it for today. Alright, my next stream tomorrow is going to be at the same time as today. It's going to be at 3 p.m. Central European time. We're going to work more on this thing. We're going to revolutionize the world of terminals, shells, Sheldons, y la concha de tu madre también. Alright, thank you so much everybody. I'll see you then.